All right, today we're working on the new and improved C6 competition drift car build. So we've done all the chassis work on this thing. We got it as a bare carcass from We See Parts. We shipped it straight from there down to my buddy AJ's shop. He did the cage in it, did an absolutely stellar job. Cage fits amazing, came out super nice. Very happy with that. So we brought it here as a tub. We went ahead and chopped the rear and chopped the front off of it, welded in plates, mounted up bash bars. We also went ahead and cut out a lot of the trans tunnel to be able to fit our G-Force GSR 4-speed dog box race transmission, since we're moving the trans from the rear to the front. And with all that, the chassis is pretty well ready for paint. So this is one of those things, it's always nice to do it, but if you're starting with a relatively complete car, to take it apart to this stage just to paint it is, it can be a tough pill to swallow. But since we already have the car here, there's really no reason not to paint it. So I am really excited. We're going to be painting the cage and the bash bars one color and the rest of the chassis a different color. Still don't know exactly what we're going to paint the outside, but we got the main stuff figured out. So yeah, that's what we're going to work on. We got a few more things to get ready. We need to get the last bit of these rockers off. We need to get our Firewall plates on, because since the Firewall's fiberglass, the plates are aluminum. I want to try to paint all that at the same time to give it kind of the best chance of matching. Then we need to get the bash bars off and just do the general prep work, and then we'll be painting. So I'm going to quit jibber jabbering about it. We got all the paint, we got all the material. Nothing left to it but to get to it, to do it. Let's get to work. All right, guys, before we get too deep into today's video, I wanted to talk to you about today's video sponsor, HelloFresh. So HelloFresh has been amazing for Chrissy and I to reach our goals. Our goals were to save time, save money, big one, eat better, and be able to cook together more. We really enjoy cooking together. Every time we do it, it's a great time. We have so much fun, but we just don't have time to do it with the traditional route of putting together a shopping list after finding a recipe that we both like and sounds good, and going to the store and getting it and coming back. We both work all the time. We both have passions that consume our lives and consume all of our time. There's just no time to do it. We've tried. It just doesn't work out. But with HelloFresh, we save so much time. I mean, everything shows up. We pick how many meals a week we want. Boom, they show up. They're pre-packaged, pre-portioned. It just doesn't get any simpler. You have your instructions, boom, right there. We magnet that to the fridge while we're cooking. Bada bing, bada boom. Next thing you know, our food's done, and we're cooking in the time it would have taken us to get delivery here anyway. And not to mention, the recipes are delicious, and they never get repetitive. Like, it's every time we pull them out, I'm like, whoa, I can't wait to eat this. I can't wait to eat that. I can't wait to eat this. Haven't had a meal that I wasn't super enamored with. So I absolutely love it. If you're interested in trying it, go to HelloFresh.com and use code TaylorDrift16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. That's HelloFresh.com, code TaylorDrift16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Give it a try. I promise you you'll like it. So that being said, I need to get back to work. So let's do it. So we started out with probably the hardest project of removing the rockers. So I'm sharpening up this air chisel bit just to get a little bit more of an aggressive edge to try to get these off. Now, these are fiberglass. Jose had already kind of tackled taking them off, but they were already a little broken, so getting them off in one piece was just not going to happen. And that just made them more difficult to take off because you don't have a complete piece to kind of pull and pry against. Now, these are held on with panel bond, which if you don't know what panel bond is, they build cars out of panel bond. They hold cars together with panel bond. It is strong. So the difficult part is I'm trying not to remove all of the panel bond, because the thickness of the panel bond is actually kind of what spaces out the body panels and gets all your body gaps correct. Now we have these rocker cover panels from the other car which don't have any panel bond on them. So again, I'd like to try to save a little bit of the panel bond here and there just so they're not, sunk in a ½ inch, because this stuff gets laid on there thick. And then again, we have the same case of they're all broken up. So luckily the air chisel situation definitely worked. Sharpening it up, it cut right through it, but it definitely was tricky. This was probably one of the most time-consuming projects that we had left on the chassis prep to-do list, but without fail, we got it done. So moving on from there, we wanted to get our old firewall plates done. So these are going to be there to seal off the firewall. We cannot have any holes in this firewall that any sort of fire or liquids or anything could spill through. That's the reason it's called a firewall. It is there essentially to protect you from fire and seal you from the engine compartment, which has all the volatile things, the oil lines, the fumes, the fuel, so on and so forth. So Josue had already made a few of these for the other car. Now, some of the ones he made for the other car aren't really going to work on this car because that car had the cage anti-intrusion bars going through the firewall. So there was a couple of plates that weren't going to work and that we were going to need to remake. But I wanted to at least get the ones that were already done on, get them riveted in, so that way we can paint it all in one shot. So just drill a hole, cleco, drill a hole, cleco, then rivet the last few, pull the clecos out, finish the riveting. Pretty straightforward. Now, I did debate on this last one. I plan on putting a pass-through for our coolant lines here, but we're really not going to know how everything's going to lay out in the car as far as AN lines and stuff go until we get the turbo kit built, which we can't build till the engine's in. So just went ahead and threw it on so we can paint it. So I went ahead and just taped up the bottom of the windshield. Now, we knew we needed to remove it, but it was one of those things, we just kind of came up on the point where we needed to paint the cage and hadn't really planned that out yet. So while we were waiting on the windshield guy to come, I just went ahead and taped it up so that way I could prime the firewall. I was a little concerned about this. You know, we're painting the firewall, which is fiberglass, and some other parts that are fiberglass as well as steel. So I was hoping that we could kind of get the finishes similar. So I found this specific paint that's supposed to bond to just about anything to prime the firewall on both sides and any other little parts that were fiberglass. We got that all primed up. And then it was time to prime the bare metal. Now I tried to clamp the can to a Sawzall to shake it. It didn't seem to work that well. Still had to shake it by hand. But we went ahead and primed up all the areas where we had done a bunch of cutting, just where there was bare metal to try to prevent it from rusting and get it cleaned up and ready before we paint it. And went ahead and finished drilling out a couple spot welds for these brackets that were on the trans tunnel. And then it was time to start priming the bash bars and the front plates where we had ground back material and all of that stuff. So if you've ever primed a cage, a bash bar, anything, any bar structure, you know, it is incredibly difficult to get all the way around it. You're working in 360 degrees around the bar, and it's so easy to look and think you got all the way there and then have a whole streak section where you didn't get the primer. So I tried my best to just make sure I went over everything thoroughly and we got a good even coat. And again, we're kind of just also throwing a little bit of primer on anything that was bare metal, you know, places where there was panel bond scraped off or where we had to do some grinding or AJ had to do some grinding when he was doing the cage. But we got all that sorted and finally got to take a look at how it was coming together. All right, bash bars are primed. The stuff comes out pretty thick and it's cold, so it wasn't helping anything. So I may have run it a little bit, but it looks good. It's nice to see that. We got the firewall primed. Still got to do the inside, but we're going to try to get the windshield pulled out tomorrow. So rear's all primed up. Looks good. Like I said, some runs on the back. This is not ideal painting weather, but hey, we're getting the job done. That's what's important. So jibber jabber. Point is, we'll let this dry. We still got to prime the cage tomorrow. I think I missed a spot. Nope, shadow. Still got to prime the cage tomorrow, but obviously be ideal if we can wait until the windshield comes out to do that. So we'll pick this back up in the morning. The Floridian in me that never gets to enjoy cool weather is hoping it stays cold, but the person in me who needs to paint this car tomorrow is hoping it's a little warmer tomorrow. The high was like 70 today, which is manageable, but now it's down in the 40s, 50s, so not great painting weather. Okay, jibber jabber, see you tomorrow. Well, the warning came, but unfortunately, the windshield guy did not. Us being last minute Larry's meant we weren't able to get him out next day. What a surprise. So we had to wait yet another day. So as much as I wanted to just wait until it was out of the way to do any of this, we needed to get a head start. This is already pushing us behind schedule. 2 days, we needed to at least get some of it primed before the windshield comes out, and then we can do the rest. Cage is mostly primed. Front end's primed. This side of the firewall's primed. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. It's all pretty smooth. I was worried about that just because of the kind of texture of the fiberglass. I mean, we won't know until we actually spray it with paint, but I'm hoping it'll look consistent between the two, you know, between the steel frame rails and stuff and then the firewall. So pretty much everything that needs to get primed is primed aside from the very front of the cage, because the only way to get paint on this part right here is by taking the windshield out. So yeah, we're gonna push this thing off to the side, get the windshield out, we'll prime the rest of the cage, paint it. Hopefully we have enough paint to do the bash bars as well. If not, we'll have to go get some more. But that's first priority. Once the cage and the bash bars are painted, or at least the cage, we need to let it sit for at least a couple days to cure, because then we're gonna have to tape up the cage to paint the rest of the chassis. So we debated back and forth, and it seemed like that was the best move, to do the cage first, because it's a lot less to tape off than taping off the chassis if we had painted the chassis first. So that's the plan, Stanleys. So we're gonna push this thing out, and we'll get back to it once the windshield's out. Well, before we push this thing out, it dawned on me that we had one more project to take care of that would be a lot better to do now than when we had nice paint on the cage, and that is fitting the rear firewall. It is always incredibly challenging to fit anything around cage down bars. You see people make them two-piece, you know, split apart, all sorts of stuff. We wanted to have it as one piece just with the slits, and I was really adamant. I really wanted to get the cuts right. I wanted to have a nice tight fit around the cage bars, and I knew it was going to be challenging, but to do so, we made this cardboard template, and we kept checking it and adding material where needed until we were finally happy that was where it needed to be cut. So we drilled with the hole saw the initial holes to give us the kind of round bottom, and then went ahead and cut this stuff out with the body saw. Now this is a tricky, tall order, cutting out carbon fiber or fiberglass, anything like this, trying to get a nice, clean, straight cut and get it in the right place. Not the easiest thing to do. So where we got it cut, we were confident was the right place. We go to put it in, not a chance. It's not going in. Now, the thing you have to realize when you do these cuts, and we did account for this, but just not enough, is that where it's going to be when it's flush and in place, where that down bar is a different place than where it's going to be as you're installing it. They both angle in towards the center and obviously angle down. So we went and lowered the cuts a little bit more, opened them up a little bit more, and there was still no chance. And then we realized there was no way we were going to be able to keep this lip. So this was meant for us to remove the original fiberglass piece, which we had gone through this, we had debated this, we weren't sure. That's how we were supposed to do it. We decided we didn't want to deal with getting all the panel bond off that factory piece. We didn't really see the point, so we just basically cut the lip until we were able to slide it in position and get it on and kind of let it overlap just enough to give us a good attachment point to do our rivets, and hey, we got it in. We now have a rear firewall, finally. So now we can push it to the side and wait for the windshield to be removed. All right, windshield is removed. Went ahead and taped up the windshield frame, pretty well ready to paint everything else. So now we can finally prime the rest of the cage. Unfortunately, one of our cans of primer was a dud, so we're one can short. So I gotta run to the store, get one more can, and I gotta get some plastic. I'm gonna get a big thick sheet to lay under here. I have a bunch of small thin ones to drape up around the garage. I'd like to just paint it outside, but the weather is being very Florida and not super cooperative. It's supposed to rain today and tomorrow and the next day, so we're gonna have to do it in here. My only gripe with doing it in here is the air handler is in the garage. So it's not supposed to draw air from in here. It draws it from inside the house, but it inevitably draws air. So if you paint while the AC's on, it just sucks those paint fumes, pumps them all through the house. So this is something adult Taylor has learned. You know, when I was 19 years old, I painted the engine bay of a 240 in my dad's garage, and the whole house smelled like paint because I didn't think anything of it. But now I've learned. I understand. So point is, we'll figure that out when we get there. Let's finish priming this cage, go get what we need, and get ready to lay some color on this and the bash bars. So I went ahead and painted the rest of the cage stuff that we couldn't get to with the windshield, and some stuff we just didn't paint because it was kind of in the danger zone, a little close to the windshield. We didn't want to risk the overspray. With that done, we could go ahead and set up our makeshift paint booth. So we went ahead and laid down a nice thick layer of plastic. Now I wish I could have got one a little wider than this. This is pretty much the widest one, unless I got one that was, 100 something feet long. But we went ahead and taped it down just to give us a good base to leave the car on, and then we could just throw some tarps over the important stuff. All right, we got things tarped off, got our paint booth set up. When we do the chassis, we're gonna tape the sheeting to the roof and make an actual paint booth. But since we're probably gonna have to work on the Saphiro in between painting the cage and painting the chassis, since we gotta let it dry, I didn't want to go tape it up and just have to take it right back down. But cage is fully primered. we're ready to party. Enough jibber jabber, let's get to mixing and painting. So we started mixing up our paint. We went with this translucent red color. So this is single stage, so we're not gonna be clear coating it. Now, because it is single stage, it's 8 to 1 to 1, the reducing ratio. So the odd thing is the measuring cup doesn't have an 8 to 1 to 1. So we had to kind of wing it a little bit there. We also didn't get any stirring sticks from the paint store, so I had to make my own little custom aluminum one, but we got all that done. We got it on the gun and started doing our test spraying. So I took a lot of time test spraying. Now I am spraying on cardboard, so it's definitely not the same, but the main thing I was trying to figure out was the fan width and the mixture. So unfortunately, I went a little heavy on the mixture. It looked right on the cardboard, but the cardboard kind of soaks it in, and it was also just kind of heavy and anticipating the best, anticipating that I wouldn't have to really go over the same areas multiple times, you know, trying to kind of just one shot through every section. But like we said with the bash bars, with this being a cage, you're kind of backtracking over spots you've already been as you're getting the next spots. And if you're off, you know, an inch on your spray, you're going, you know, a second coat over a place you've already been. So we spent a lot of time messing around with it as we went, and we were able to dial in a pretty good fluid mixture to fan ratio that allowed me to kind of just do a couple quick passes over everything, and just made it easier to not go too heavy in certain spots and not heavy enough in others. We did get some runs in that process, but hey, it is what it is. We got it done. We pulled the bash bars off to get those out of the way, pulled the car out, rolled it over into the shop so that way we'd have the floor to paint the bash bars. Now this was a lot of fun because it was a big change from doing the cage. You know, painting the bash bars is difficult for all the same reasons, but the cage is in the car. You're trying not to hit certain parts of it as you're crawling around in there, and there's just spots you can't even get to. So going to something that could be presented right in front of you and you could just paint without anything being hard to get to was pretty cool. It felt good. I was jamming out. I was having a really good time painting these bash bars. Paint was laying down super smooth. You know, we had finally figured out the settings after the trial and error on the cage itself, which is arguably the more important part, but hey, we better late than never. We figured it out. We had the settings dialed for how I was doing it, because you got to remember, this is my second real paint project ever, you know, and it's a challenging one. So once we had all that dialed in, man, I was jamming. I was having a good time. So Josue did have to sacrifice himself a little bit so we can get everything painted all the way, but we got it done. We are done laying down the red, or so we thought. Man, this part went super smooth. I am really happy with that. We were talking about it. It's kind of like when I was learning how to TIG weld, you know, and I'm fumbling my way and I'm just barely getting it, and I go MIG weld something, it was like, wow, this is a piece of cake. I was just doing TIG, it's way harder. This is kind of the same thing. Trying to paint the cage and the car is so hard because you're constantly at a different distance, a different angle, you're getting into tight spaces, and you come out here and you do something that's just kind of perfectly laid out. It was way easier. So, man, the color came out so good. I don't know if you can really see that. The color is nice, man. I am beyond pleased with how all of this came out. So it all went super smooth. We definitely had some issues in the cage, but at least this part we didn't screw it up. So let's go look at the cage. It's just starting to drizzle. We got this done just in time. But I mean, it looks nice. I mean, there's still some spots we didn't get. We tried, you know, we went over certain areas numerous times. But I mean, overall, it looks great. There's some runs. Oop, we didn't get down there all the way. You know, I'm learning. This is my second real paint project. It's, you know, you learn things as you go. And one of the things is, for me at least, it's better to run less paint. And then that way, as I go over the same area over and over, it's not as easy to put too much paint, if that makes sense. It's easier for me to go over it a few times and get enough paint on it than it is to not go too much. But overall, man, it looks killer. Ah, man, I see all the spots we missed now. It's bugging me. Oh, we got back there. We got that little bit up here. We got under this bar. Yeah, I tried. Nah, but I definitely could have got that. And then this bar, but I think I tried on this one too. But I probably could have got that too. It's a cage at the end of the day. I mean, where we did get paint looks really good. Like, I'm stoked on that. Besides missing some spots here and there, it came out really solid. Now, the hard part's gonna be how do we tape this up in a way that we can paint the rest of the chassis a completely different color and not get overspray. That will be the challenge, but hey, one part done, we're getting there. Once this thing's painted, we can start rocking along. So I'm happy we got that done at least. All right, well, before we call it, I wanted to at least give you a look at it in the sunlight. You know, you can see kind of the glistening color with the flashlight on it, but seeing the whole overall picture in the sunlight definitely gives you a different, I don't know, different appreciation for the color, I guess. But super happy with this color choice. I was just trying to get something similar to match the FTF control arms. Oh, of course the sun goes away now. So we'll probably try to come back with a paintbrush and just get in those hard to reach areas that we couldn't get with the gun. But other than that, I mean, all in all, I can't complain. I'm very happy with how this turned out. I've always wanted to do this. This is so exciting to me. I've always wanted to paint an entire chassis and then paint the cage a different color. This whole freaking chassis is gonna be, I just can't wait. I can't wait to get the rest of the chassis done and see it with the chassis one color, the cage and the bash bars another color. It should pop so well together. So excited for that, but for now, we gotta let this thing cure for a couple days before we go wrapping it and taping it and doing all that stuff, and we need to touch up those little odds and ends. So hopefully in a couple days here, we can paint the rest of the chassis and see this thing as one complete picture. But for now, we're out of time. Well, we need time. We gotta wait a little bit. So I hope to see you guys for that, but for now, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye.